This bulletin proudly brought to you in association with Alex Campbell's Menswear.
Kia ora, good evening. Welcome to the South Today. I'm Daryl Baser. As we enter the second week of New Zealand being at COVID-19 pandemic alert level 4, the number of cases continues to grow as testing is ramping up. Things are changing for New Zealand as this global pandemic continues to spread, and the South Today isn't immune to the issues facing the nation as we all band together to stop the spread of COVID-19. We at Allied Press thank you for your viewership and understanding at this time as New Zealand joins the rest of the world in doing everything possible to reduce the impacts of the virus. The Ministry of Health says there are 8 new cases of COVID-19 in the Southern District Health Board area. Meanwhile, the number of cases linked to a wedding in Bluff has continued to skyrocket, increasing by 12 to 34 after climbing by 14 yesterday. At today's COVID-19 briefing, Director General of Health Ashley Bloomfield says there are 89 new confirmed or probable cases, the largest daily rise so far. He says community transmission of coronavirus is still very, very low.
For those cases that we have information on, we are still seeing a strong link to overseas travel, that is 51% of cases, as well as links to confirmed cases within New Zealand, 31%. And at the moment, we're only categorising 1% as community transmission.
Bloomfield says so far about 26,000 people have been tested and the number of laboratories testing for COVID-19 is growing.
We now have the 8 labs around the country processing tests, and by next week that will be 10. Our total volume that we can process each day is now over 4,000 tests, and in the last 7 days the average has been 1,835 per day.
Police Commissioner Mike Bush gave an update of the situation as it relates to law and order and says thankfully there's only been a slight lift in the number of family harm incidents since the nationwide lockdown began.
We haven't had the significant increase in family violence, family harm through reports, but I am aware from those who are working on the ground in this, particularly NGOs, particularly in areas like counties Manukau and others, that there has been an increase in family harm, family violence.
Today is Commissioner Bush's last day in his current role leading New Zealand Police, and he paid tribute to those at the forefront of the fight against the coronavirus.
Hospitals, private and public, that are on the front line of this response to COVID-19, what they do, the professional way they do it, the courageous way they do it, to keep everyone safe. So can I, from the bottom of my heart, thank all of them for their commitment to their country and to the people of New Zealand.
In today's briefing, the Ministry of Health has suggested areas with low transmission rates could have lockdown conditions eased before those with high rates of transmission. In Dunedin, the South Today. Former Highlanders coach Jamie Joseph has been coaching rugby in Japan, however has returned to Otago following the outbreak of COVID-19. He caught up with Rugby Chat's Paul Dwyer for a lengthy chat via Zoom today.
Welcome to ODT Rugby Chat. I said I'd come back this week. Got a special guest for you today. Remember, Rugby Chat's brought to you by Garage Door. My old mate Gerald Orr over there in Kaikavari. Make sure you get in and buy a garage of him when he's open again. So I got a bit of stick last week as I interviewed Steve Hepburn and he was far too close to me. We were within the 2 metre period. So I've actually got Jamie Joseph online. Jamie's actually coming in from his home up the hill. So mate, welcome along. But first thing, what are you doing? You're actually at home, so you've got back from Japan. Talk me through all that drama.
Well, since the World Cup is finished, Paul, I came home last year at the end of, just after the World Cup final. Then there was the All Black coaching job and all that stuff that went alongside that. So that sort of consumed our family for 2 or 3 weeks. Once I made the decision to go back to Japan and not contest the All Black job, we had a bit of a break as a family. We went up to the Marlborough Sounds, where I'm from, and Went back to Japan late January, getting ready for this year, which is so rugby's gone a little bit crazy. Prior to the coronavirus situation, rugby was going mad up there. So went back to Japan, went to the Laureus Awards in Germany as a team was nominated for a prize there. And then just when we were about to get into our work, everything started shutting down. So from basically February to now, I've just been in Dunedin working remotely, basically like this online, going back and forward with my staff in Japan, trying to get things planned for the rest of the year.
So, mate, so talk me through what's happening in Japan. So, are they in lockdown the same as we are currently?
They're not at the moment. They haven't been. They reacted quite quickly because when China had it, and I guess we're talking around February, there wasn't a lockdown as such. I'm not sure if they have the levels like we do here, but it got quiet. They closed the schools down immediately. So that was one thing they did proactively, and schools are currently closed there. So they have been closed for some time. Of course, the Olympic Games is the big thing on the sporting agenda in Japan. So there was a lot of work done behind the scenes to ensure that those games would continue. Now that the decision's been made to cancel, I think they've put the coronavirus front of mind, and things are starting to happen now.
So, mate, but rugby-wise over there, rugby's been shut down right across. Are we out of season now? Where is the Japanese rugby season as we speak?
That's right. So round 6 of the top league, Japanese top league, where we had unprecedented numbers. You know, we're getting crowds of 20-odd thousand people to club games of footy up there. There's some good rugby players up there, but really the top 5 or 6 teams dominate the competition. And actually, there's an interesting photo that went around at the time where even though the virus was starting in its starting stages, fans were still going with masks and suiting up to go to the rugby game. So rugby's become very popular since the World Cup. But since round 6, they've cancelled the whole competition. They haven't cancelled the July Test matches, which is what I'm preparing for as yet. But as you know, like this virus is quite rapid when it wants to be. So it's really hard to get any form of certainty around what's going to happen, in the next 2 months.
You're still getting paid?
At this stage, Paul, I'm okay, yeah.
Oh, good. I'm pleased to hear it, mate. So at the same time, it must be good because you're not spending that much time in New Zealand, so it must be good, even though you're on enforced lockdown, spending time with the family at home.
Yeah, I mean, being with family, I haven't been with family. Well, I've got all my children home, with family of 4 children. One's at university and the other kids have. But I've been so busy in the last 2 or 3 years preparing for last year's World Cup that even when I'm here, I'm sort of mentally somewhere else usually. So it's been nice just to hunker down with the family and be together. And we talked about last night. It's probably been 10 years since it's been like this, since the early days.
They'll be getting sick of you. They'll be getting sick of you by now, are they?
We've got our own little spaces. One's out. We've got our own bedroom, so
right.
we can hunker down here.
So, mate, I want to talk about the World Cup next. So, but the model for Japanese rugby is not the same as the rest of the world. Like in New Zealand, you're getting paid to play NPC and you're getting paid to play Super 15, and that's part of your contract. And then the All Blacks pay you to pay if you're lucky enough to become an All Black. They then pay you. But that's not the model that works in Japan, though, is it?
No, I think this is the part of the success story around the Japanese World Cup campaign last year that nobody really understands is our players aren't professional. The Japanese national team, so we don't contract anybody. We pay them an allowance of about New Zealand $100 a day, and that's like the good old days when I was playing for the All Blacks, where we basically were just playing for the love of the game. The companies where the players make their money, and not all the players either. The foreign players obviously are professional rugby players that represent their companies. If we can just use Toyota as an example, who employs all of their players as employees. The Japanese players just go to work like you and I would. And then the foreign players are the professional players. And then effectively we lend or borrow the players from those companies to play for the national team. And that's as good as it gets.
Right, mate. So talk me through that, how that all worked. I mean, in terms of, because we read bits and pieces in the media that you were effectively planning 2 years out, and you had these guys in camp. How long were they in camp for before you kicked into the World Cup?
Well, I was in control of the players from about February last year. So we didn't train all the time, but we trained a lot of that time. I think the key part here is, they didn't have to go to work. So when I say control the players, we controlled their rest breaks, we controlled basically what they were doing with regards to preparing for the World Cup. Now, in the past 2 or 3 years, that was never the case. They'd have to go back to work. We'd have to apply to the companies to get X amount of players out of work. And then they have to go back to the company. And that process takes a lot of time. And it's really, I guess, intruding from my perspective to actually prepare a footy team. Last year, that wasn't the case. So we started the guys off really slow. We pulled the majority of our players out of Super Rugby and we gave them a really good base. And that sort of held us in good stead when we got to the World Cup. So our peaking, if you like, all happened at the right time, and we were in peak condition at the right time of the year.
So,
and that was a big part of control.
Right. So, so you leading into that campaign, like, you must have been pretty confident that you had a better prepared team than most other sides, because most other sides only get their players, 2, 3, 4 weeks prior to going into any campaign. So you must have been pretty confident that you were going to put on a pretty good show.
I think if you follow the Japanese rugby team for the past 2 years, not just last season or the pre-season, we were getting better. We're starting to prove we should have beaten France a couple of years ago, or a year prior to the. It was a draw. We competed really well against England, Twickenham. We were winning the game, 20 minutes to go, and we were overwhelmed in the end. But what it really did is it crystallised what we needed to do as a team. Part of it was actually getting fitter and stronger and all the rest of it. But the other part really was we had to create a trust where the players would start believing that they could actually knock these teams over. And that takes a bit of time, Paul. So
I want to talk about. So you had that game run where you won your 4 pool games. You beat Russia, you beat Ireland, you beat Samoa, and beat Scotland. I mean, we could sort of see it on TV over here, the amount of hype that caused. But has that changed the landscape in Japan about rugby on the back of those 4 wins in those pool games?
Yeah, absolutely. So I basically, as I said earlier on, I got out of Japan. I went a wee bit crazy. I remember going for a walk after the World Cup final, and this was, we'd finished playing rugby for 3 weeks. It was about 6 o'clock in the morning, and the rugby had changed, and so your face gets automatically, you recognise straight away. People are just, in Japan, as you know, in Tokyo, there's millions of people there. So it's hard to go out and just do things normally. And I was just the coach. So with the players, what that looked like, that was on TV, different shows every night. There was a lot of, they became overnight celebrities. When the rugby started up again this year, as I said, unprecedented numbers. There's tens of thousands of people just tuning up to club games. Rugby became probably the most popular sport in a country where it's the least popular. It's baseball, there's sumo, there's soccer that's well ahead of rugby union. So it's new times over there.
And Michael Leach, he's obviously a godlike hero over there now. I mean, you saw the crowds react when he came onto the field. So what does Michael Leach bring to Japanese rugby?
Well, first of all, he's a unbelievable rugby player. So, and he's been when he plays for Japan, he's been playing at that level. His form has been outstanding for quite a few years, not just at the World Cup. He's been living in Japan since he was 15, and he's 30 years old now. So half his life's been spent in Japan. He's recognised as one of them. He's a Japanese passport. He's married to a Japanese lady with Japanese children. He's got Japanese businesses there. So he's part of that landscape there. And, I mean, if you wanted to have a comparison, when the sumos come from Hawaii or wherever they come from, foreign sumos that come here, they get adopted by that country. He's effectively being, he's seen in that light. Someone told me he's more recognised than the Prime Minister in Japan. But the flip side of that is he can't go anywhere, the poor guy. So every time he sort of steps out, he's absolutely mobbed. So he spends a lot of time at home. He's got a coffee shop, and I think he spends a lot of time drinking coffee, being in there.
Right. Okay. Now let's. We've a lot of people have touched on this, and the media have, and I probably have at some stage, about how you and Brownie work so well. We've got this impression you're the big grumpy guy telling Brownie what to do, and then he goes and be's the nice guy with all the players. So, but how does that really? Why do you and Brownie actually work so well?
It's a good question because I think we've got a similar value set when it comes to rugby and what we believe in philosophically, and that's really hard to point out. But I think that's around the way we were both brought up, and then how we were brought up in the Otago fraternity in the early days, coming through the ranks with the likes of Laurie for me and Gordy. So a lot of those values, and then the way we want to play the game and believe the game should be played, we're really aligned. So what that means is we're really serious rugby coaches. We're really serious about planning and selection, but we're not so serious when it comes to having a bit of a laugh and getting the team together. And I'd like to say that if you look at our teams, the boys love playing rugby. They love being part of that team, and I think so that little relationship between the two of us, where sometimes you can look at it as good cop, bad cop. I'm not too sure, mate. It's hard to self-analyse yourself, but we get things done and we have a bit of fun along with it. So I think that's how I'd like to.
That's how you see it. So, mate, so I've talked about just briefly talk about how you see the landscape. It's a tough question for everybody, but obviously we've got everything's basically shut down in New Zealand, and you touched on it. Do we actually see any international rugby coming for anybody at this stage? We certainly won't be in that June, July window, surely.
Yeah, so just reading what I've been reading in the last month or so, looking from the outside in, and the focus seems to be around money and the fact that how we're going to pay for everything. So then straight away, what comes to head is how we're going to pay the players, coaches, and everyone involved in the game. And if we've got no games coming in, and if you've got no money in the bank, then unions are falling over like the States. I understand Australia in tough trouble. So everyone has to take a pay cut for the game to survive. So what that really means is there's highly motivated administrators there trying to get the game going, which is good. And then the big hurdle is, when is this coronavirus going to end? So for us, we haven't cancelled our test matches in July yet. We're still hoping that we can play them. It's same for end of the year. And then I guess the people that make those decisions are assessing all the risk daily. But as yet, I haven't heard anything being cancelled 100%. So whilst it's likely, we're just planning and working forward.
Because I'm hearing about where they are with with Super 15, whatever it's called now. So we'll go with Super 15. I'm hearing that hopefully they're sort of planning on, because that you can't just turn around and say, right, we're good to go, because you can't just turn on to players and say, right, we're going to go next Tuesday, because you're going to need you need probably at least a decent month to prepare before you get back on the training track. Would that be a fair comment?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think if there's no rugby, that's on the basis that everything was going to be finished. So the next section of rugby games, be it July test matches, and then go back to ITM Cup. So that was the normal schedule. But if it's just the point of having rugby, I guess they're going to have to consider delays when those test matches can start. So it might have been the 5th of July or the 6th of July, what have you. But if there's no rugby in August, why not play them in August, for example? And it's all going to come down to, I think, is just how everybody is coping with the virus, and that's different from country to country.
Okay, mate, and let's just touch on, you mentioned the All Blacks. So you went through that All Black coaching experience, and in the end you didn't put your hand up. Did you end up disappointed with that whole experience going through that stuff?
Well, I think if I go back a year before the World Cup, and so apart from the 4 wins we had at the World Cup, it's still the same coach, and so then things went crazy, So we won 4 games, we won 4 test matches at the World Cup, and then all of a sudden it became a contender. But prior to that, I'd actually been working with the Japanese rugby union and around continuing the hard work that we'd been doing up until that date. So I'd worked for them for 3 years. We'd be making massive progress. The World Cup was just the pinnacle of all of that hard work coming together. And then the All Black play, if you like, just came right at the end of the World Cup. So it wasn't part of my plan to be a head coach of the World Cup. I'd had conversations with Fozzie about joining his team, and there was because of the family situation, we've done our time in Japan and we'll do the World Cup, and then we'll come back home, and that could be a really good option for us. But once we were successful at the World Cup, things took a punch on the nose, really, and a lot of unexpected things started happening. So the decision was really difficult. I think in hindsight, I feel that the landscape for coaches overseas has really changed. There's a lot of New Zealand coaches, as you know, that are coaching all over the world. And the process in New Zealand didn't really allow me to actually consider it seriously. And I guess what I mean by that is applying for a job and applying for a job at the same time you're applying for another job doesn't show much loyalty. So I guess one of those values that we've learned in Otago back in the days when we're coming up through the ranks with Brandy and Cordy and all those guys is loyalty is a big factor, and just because it's professional, for me it's still really important. So we just sort of stuck together, kept it simple, and just decided our time wasn't ready, and we go back to Japan, finish the job, and then if that opportunity is there next time around, Paul, or we're good enough to actually contend again, well, maybe that's the time.
You'll put your hands up then. Okay, look, I've got a bit of housekeeping, and we've got just a couple of things. We did have a competition last week where we got people to send in their best ever player for Otago and the reasons why. So I've actually got a winner of that competition. We didn't get many entries, by the way. I'm a bit disappointed about that. But our winner was Jeremy Williams, and this is what he wrote. Don Colling is Otago's greatest rugby player. He played 80 games for Otago between 68 and 77. He had the silky skills, the glue in the back line, which often played on muddier fields. The 1975 season he was outstanding. Otago beat Scotland, the Junior All Blacks, and won 16 out of 18. Not even the Pro Boys could do that. I don't think Jamie did that in his career. They thrashed Auckland 22-4. And as we all know, his family was heavily involved in Otago rugby as well. So Jeremy Williams was our winner last week. But I've got good news. I did prep Jamie before. He's going to give you a question possibly on Japan and the World Cup. And you can send your answers in to me, paul.dwyer at Allied Press, over the next few days. And we'll pick a winner, and you'll win a year's subscription to Rugby News. If we ever get to write about rugby again, we'll send those copies to you. So Jamie, what's your question, mate?
With limited preparation, Paul, mate, I guess my question would be quite a simple one if you just Googled it, but my challenge really is to keep away from the computers and just name who the captain for Japan against Ireland was.
There it is. That's the simple question. Who was the captain in Japan playing Ireland? And I've done so much homework, I know that Japan won that game 19-12. So there it is. Next week, just letting you know, we've got our big quiz, our ODT quiz in the paper tomorrow. Make sure you look at that. Get your entry forms in. Steve Hertburn has promised me the questions are going to be easier than last week. I've had a quick look at them. I knew at least half them, so therefore they must be easy. And next week, hopefully, I'll get somebody on from the Highlanders and we can have a bit of a chat about what's going to happen with the Super 15 season. I am hearing, the rumour is that we'll be playing by the start of July. I don't think I'm speaking out of school saying that. That's the word on the street. But Jamie, thanks, mate. Enjoy day 8 in lockdown, and we'll talk again shortly.
Thanks very much, guys. Stay safe.
Cheers, mate.
Time now for a look at the weather.
Tonight's weather proudly brought to you by Mole Map.
Beginning with the situation. Chilly with cloud on the Otago coast, but for most of the rest of the region should enjoy sunshine and mild temperatures. And tomorrow it should be even warmer. In the southern towns, Balclutha, Lumsden and Gore can expect light winds and clear skies. Lumsden and Gore head for 18, Balclutha is set to be 17, and the Catlins should have moderate northeasterlies, some cloud and 15 degrees. Heading westwards, the Central Lakes, Queenstown, Wanaka and Alexandra and also Te Anau are all in for light winds and clear skies. Wanaka and Alexandra would be the warmest with 20 degrees, 19 for Queenstown, and it should reach 16 degrees in Te Anau. Heading north, along the coast, Timaru and Oamaru are due for moderate northeasterlies with some cloud, 16 for Timaru and 15 for Oamaru. In Dunedin, low cloud and maybe a few drizzle patches tonight with an overnight low of 11 degrees. Cloudy and cool tomorrow with northeasterly winds becoming breezy in the afternoon, a high of 13 and a low of 11. Strong, gusty, cool northeasterlies on Saturday with plenty of cloud, but a few sunny periods too. A high of 14 and a low of 11 degrees. It'll be fine tonight in Invercargill with a low of 5 degrees. Mostly fine tomorrow with a high of 17 and a low of 5 degrees. Warmer northerlies freshening on Saturday with high cloud increasing during the day and a high of 19 with a low of 11. And that's all from the South Today team for this Thursday. For the latest news from the southern region, head online to odt.co.nz and follow Channel 39 on Facebook. Stay tuned for the latest announcement from the government after this. Have a great evening, stay calm during the pandemic, don't travel unless it's absolutely necessary, and, as the Prime Minister says, be kind. Ka kite a popo.
This bulletin proudly brought to you in association with Alex Campbell's Menswear.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.